we are excited to dive into the session. So we're going to start off with a chat question, a little warm up, right? So you've already shared your name and where you're from, but we want to ask you to share an interesting or exciting example of AI use in informal science education. This could be something that you yourself have done or something that you've seen in person on a webinar, right? You read about it in an article, but we just want to know what kinds of exciting, interesting things have you seen with regard to AI use in informal science? And you should see that question in the chat as well. So while those waterfall responses occur, I'm going to start our introductions. We have our first panelist, Dr. Brian Magerko. Um, Dr. Magerko is a Regents Professor of Digital Media, the Director of Graduate Studies in Digital Media, and the head of the Expressive Machinery Lab at Georgia Tech. He received his Bachelor's in Science and Cognitive Science from Carnegie Mellon and his Master's of Science and PhD in Computer Science and Engineering from the University of Michigan. His research explores how studying human and machine cognition can inform the creation of new human/computer creative experiences. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Magerko.
Hi, sorry, I'm distracted by the chat. One of the examples I was going to bring up is literally the example that Joyce brought up about the Exploratorium.
Nice.
Um, maybe I'll let Joyce talk about that. Hi, good afternoon, evening, morning, depending on where folks are zooming in from. I'm going to try to get my slides up here and successfully share it as I did earlier. Great. So this is just going to be a very quick overview of some work that we've been doing under our NSF AISL project for the past few years, as well as some sort of interesting spin-off projects from that work. And at the body of all of it is a collaboration with Georgia Tech, Northwestern University, and an evaluation research group, the Findings Group. This has been in concert with museums in the Atlanta area, like the Museum of Design Atlanta, as well as a larger dissemination partner in Chicago at the Museum of Science and Industry. We're currently partnering with the Children's Museum of Pittsburgh to kind of do the final pilot studies and summative study of the work I'm going to present. A lot of the questions that we're asking in this project are centered around the role of embodiment and creativity in communicating concepts of about AI in informal spaces. So okay, there we go. Great. So we proposed three research questions, and our PO said, "Whoa, just do two." So also here's less money, you know. Uh, But we initially proposed on looking at how interest development is fostered in particular with the with interventions that are focused on different kinds of embodiment and creative making, and what the role of embodiment and creative making has in the learning process about AI. Are there certain things that are easier to learn about if they're embodied with AI? Or are there certain concepts that are more engaging to learn and more effective to learn in a creative open-ended experience? So these are the kinds of questions that we had pre-existing probes for, and we applied to build seven more, and we're told don't build anything, just do the things that you got and do them really well. So we have these three exhibits that I'll run through, and the advice was very good because we're really just at the end of the grant, and I'm not showing you a finished prototype. So the final versions are being reified this upcoming semester. The first is Lumini X. It has a little bit of background music, but I don't think any voiceover. This is a project that is based off of a decades plus long AI technology I've worked on called Lumini, which has been an effort in understanding how computers can learn how to move and dance with people and improvise with us in embodied and human and human-like ways. So it's been used as a performance technology. The Kennesaw State University School of Dance used it to have the world's first human AI dance performance or improvised dance performance a year ago. And actually, if you fly through Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta the next year, there's a display of this project at T Gate or in T Terminal somewhere. I haven't flown since it's been up. So, but so this is a thing that I've done as sort of a cognitive scientist and an AI researcher, a human-centered AI researcher, and we've put it in public spaces, and people have gone, "Huh, that was weird," and had no idea what they interacted with. So we thought this was a really good opportunity to provide a more on-rails public experience that also opened the hood and showed people how this kind of thing worked a bit. So you see a three-panel sort of design here, and each of these is sort has a different function. Somebody can just be walking and looking at one of these at a time, but the main thing is the middle part where there's an AI here in the middle. Oh, okay. Well, or we can start with the first part. Um, but the first part is, hey, how does the computer see your body? So it, you know, it's reasoning about all these little points on your body, but actually it's reasoning about your skeleton. But actually it's reasoning about your skeleton at even higher level than that with this knowledge representation that we're using. And it tries to basically get across the idea that there's a representation of the body and there's stuff like semantic knowledge that the computer is actually able to apply to it. Basically help it with machine learning, which is in the third panel. The middle. Okay, yeah, here, this is where I want to. Okay, I clicked pause, but it didn't pause. That's cool. Oh, my screen sharing was paused. Okay, there, I paused the video. Sorry about that. So this is a video of the second panel at the Museum of Design Atlanta, maybe a year and a half ago. And it's essentially a dance battle. The AI is like, "Hey, show me what good moves you've got," and you go, "Okay, they just jump around or do whatever." And the AI says, "Okay, did I get that right?" And it shows that it kind of copied it. And there's this back and forth that takes place, and at the end, it's like, "All right, well, let's have a dance battle or a dance party," and it's just sort of a free-formed improvised dance with you and the AI. And finally, the third panel, which you can see, I should could have just shown this video twice. But the third panel here, you can see on the right, this is a prototype version of it from maybe a summer ago, where it is trying to show, hey, this thing is learning. It is actually storing like these dance moves in a database and is showing that some things are more similar to other things depending on their properties that are we talk about in panel one. So it kind of tries to wrap everything together. It's also sort of like a public board where it's like, look, my dance is up there kind of thing for kids. And it's a way to show from panel two, oh, look, this got learned and is now part of this hidden database that we're visualizing for you here. So these are sort of designed to be both experiential as also just like kind of complementary to watching what the kid's doing in the middle, as well as being intended to be a 1, 2, 3 experience. So there's a lot of different like entry points for it and ways of going from observing to directly dancing with the thing that we feel like we support pretty well with this. This is the main thing from Georgia Tech in this project, and I'm trying to go as quickly as I know where I could go far longer than I have time for. This is KnowledgeNet. This is a project that is a digital version of Dury Long's dissertation work on AI Unplugged. And it is a semantic network that is you're basically building this little knowledge base of semantic rules for a world to help an elderly alien simulate its memories. It's like, I remember the good old days. Can you help me? when I used to live with this talking tree named Johnny, and Johnny loved being around water. Oh, yes, he did. And so you make a little semantic network of a tree that really likes being around water, or that swims, or that fulfills that like in condition in a number of ways. And so there's a bit of creativity involved. There's some storytelling involved. Kids, it's almost like an AI dollhouse. If you've ever played Scribblenauts, it's an example that I've continually pushed that team to kind of consider in terms of having lots of different solutions to problems. But this is implemented on top of an IDEM table. It does take tangibles. We're not clear if they're really necessary for this project though. And then there's Databytes, which is I don't know why I thought I needed audio for these. Databytes, which is the same video that I put in here twice. That's great. Let me see if I have a different video. Oh, nope. Cool. Okay. Well, forgetting the video that I put in, I made a mistake here. But it is about knowledge curation or data curation for machine learners. So there's a little table that you can put down paper pieces of pizza toppings or sandwich toppings. And you're trying to train it on either side the difference between a pizza and a sandwich. And so kids get to like make their own favorite pizza or make silly pizzas or try to confuse the AI, and there's sort of the results of the train network are up on the board, and there's very much sort of a reflection on what it means to give data to an AI rather than it just being an ephemeral sort of process. But if you imagine just like things that look like pieces of paper with I really worked hard on these videos too. Sorry about that. Do I have time for two extra slides? I'm
You
not hearing
have,
enough.
you technically have 1 minute.
1 minute. Great. All right. So, quickly, this is some of the offshoot work that we've done. One is the chatbot of truth, which is also looking at embodiment. Quite literally, we're doing a study where we have this as a screen version and are trying to compare the differences. But it's essentially you put your hand inside. It's based off of this old sculpture from Italy, and you ask it a question, a yes or no question, and the AI gives you a yes or no. And it's sort of playing on this mentality that people have as treating these things like oracles, but which people I argue tend to do. And but it gives you context on that on the screen to the side of it. It says, "Hey, that was a good question. You know what? You actually should know there are good and bad kinds of questions to ask these things. It's not always it's going to say something no matter what you ask. But if you ask it a question about what you're wearing today, like a raw LLM will just make up things. But in actuality, it can't see you. So like you need to understand that these things have limitations in terms of the knowledge they have access to, or understand that they may seem like they have empathy, but they actually don't experience human experience and don't have empathy or whatever. So there's like a class of sort of kinds of questions that we get learners to reflect on in terms of good and poorly formed questions for these. And really lastly, I just wanted to show this project and I should play this with audio, but this is some recent work out of the studio that I run at Georgia Tech. It is it's an engagement with ambient AI in a public space. And it is essentially an enormous musical, room-sized musical instrument that's controlled by these helium-filled 10-foot large inflatables. The lights inside of them respond, and the music responds to the position and sort of the properties of the inflatables. And this was just a prototype that we're working on reifying and actually moving in a few different directions in terms of really playful and tangible ways of engaging with AI in different ways. So I think that's the last. Yeah, you guys don't care about how I'm evaluating. You can ask if you want to know how I evaluate. Great. So thank you all for listening and attending and asking fantastic questions in the near future.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. I feel like we had like so much information. I have so many questions for you. Um,
Great. Then I
I'm
did
gonna,
my job.
yeah, I'm gonna leave them to the end, but wow. What I'm gonna ask the chat to do right now is name something that stood out to you in that presentation. I can literally, I wrote down like 15 things, but I'm curious to know what's one thing, at least one thing that stood out to you, or something that you want to know more about. And this is really going to get our chat ready, like our question bank ready for what we can ask. All right. So as you all work on that, I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to start to introduce our next speakers. Okay, cool. So happy to introduce our next two panelists, Doctors Ari Krakowski and Dr. Eric Greenwald. So to start, Dr. Krakowski is a senior learning designer and exhibit services lead at UC Berkeley's Lawrence Hall of Science, there we go, where she directs transdisciplinary learning design and research aimed at advancing justice and equity in science education. Her work translates complex science and technology fields such as AI, computational thinking, and biotech to interactive exhibits, instructional resources, and professional learning experiences that foster culturally affirming and meaningful engagement with science. Her team created Virtually Human and Inside AI, exhibitions that invite young children and families to explore, make sense of, and critically reflect on AI. Likewise, Dr. Eric Greenwald is also a learning sciences researcher and a senior research lead at the Lawrence Hall of Science. His work advances learning design and support systems change at the intersection of science, math, computational thinking, and AI. In particular, he studies how learning can be designed towards more robust and equitable socio-technical understandings of AI systems that better position learners for criticality and agency in a world we know is increasingly embedded with AI. Thank you both for joining us, and I'm going to actually pass it over to you all.
Great. Share. All right. So yeah, I'm Ari, and I'm here with Eric, and our colleague Tim also contributed to all of this work. We're going to be talking about our experiences designing two AI exhibitions, Virtually Human, which opened in fall 2023, and Inside AI Explorando IA, which opened a few months ago in September. The Virtually Human exhibition arose from our AISL project, which was a collaboration with USC's Institute for Creative Technology and TERT as the evaluator. The project was responding to a scarcity of research in the informal STEM field about how free choice learning settings like science centers could engage young children in building AI literacy. And to our knowledge, Virtually Human was one of the first really interactive museum exhibits in the US designed explicitly to support young children and their families in engaging with and making sense of AI. And we're really excited to share how this work has evolved. Virtually Human was very popular with our audiences and led us to have a dedicated space for public engagement with AI at the Lawrence Hall of Science. And this space connects into our other AI learning and engagement work at the Lawrence with school district leaders and educators, UC Berkeley faculty, teen programs, and more. So this is our second exhibition in the space. The focus of today's session is about playful pathways to AI literacy in informal STEM. We thought a lot about AI literacy in our design-based research process leading into our AISL project and to shape our design considerations for the exhibition. There's a lot of different frameworks out there. We leaned heavily into the Long and Magerko framework, so really excited to be presenting here with you, Brian. What we noticed also is that a lot of the AI literacy frameworks out there focus mostly on formal learning rather than informal spaces, and so are geared more toward a space where there's an educator like mediating the learning. So there's really not that much known about how young children especially build AI literacy, and particularly in this like very free choice informal learning space like that is a science center. Also, we know that AI literacy frameworks are still very much processing, like how are we going to position generative AI, which is arguably one of the more challenging entry points for developing AI literacy. And yet for the general public, the majority of folks think that generative AI is AI, but of course we know that it's so much more, and that's really, really important also for AI in like science contexts that we think about a lot. I also wanted to touch briefly on a couple of the aspects connected to our situated learning design consideration. Our exhibits need to meet learners where they are. So whether that's like AI native or newbie, whether they're excited or suspicious about AI, we really want all visitors to be able to connect. And that means connecting into expectations that people have from a visit to a science center, which is like a fun and interactive place. So all of these design considerations, and I just touched on a couple, contributed to our exhibit learning, design, and experience goals. And I'm not going to read them all, but I just want to sort of point out that there's sort of like content goals here around AI literacy and sense making around AI. So not just experiencing it, but like getting under the hood. And then goals connected more toward learners' dispositions toward AI. And thinking about the focus on playful pathways for today's session, it's important for us to note that playful isn't always where people are in their disposition toward AI, like more and more. And because we focus on developing criticality, we necessarily need to attend to ethics. And that's in tension with playfulness, because playfulness is what visitors are expecting when they come to this visit. So that's a tension that we've felt a lot, and Eric will talk a lot more about it. I wanted to share some of the strategies that have emerged from our work that support children and families in engaging with AI. The first is that many of our interactives focus on relatable cognitive tasks, like in our day-to-day life, that a lot of us kind of take for granted, like figuring out what facial expression someone's making or trying to figure out if someone likes a joke that you're telling. So then we kind of pivoted to an analogous question like, could AI do this too? And this approach, which we termed metacognitive embodiment in our research, positions children to investigate the capabilities of each AI model in the exhibit by drawing upon their own human experience and the shared lived experience with their family members or peers that are interacting with them in the exhibit. So these kinds of you do it, AI does it experiences are paired in the exhibition. Okay. For a few of our digital interactives, we were also able to design kind of, there's a free explorer mode and then this tell me more interaction on top of that. And so the tell me more mode allowed visitors to kind of get under the hood. So they could just kind of walk up and have an exploratory interaction and then learn more about like how the AI is working. And that would highlight some of the AI concepts at play in the explore interaction. And we designed a lot of opportunities for parents and caregivers and older siblings to deepen younger kids' engagement with the AI models. So even if they had like no AI expertise, the signs and the guiding questions, even though the younger visitors kind of blew right past them and went to the interactive, the adults would leverage them to deepen the experience for their kids. And while we're really proud of our digital experiences, we also know that learning is a very social activity. So we balance the digital interactives with physical unplugged counterpart exhibits. So these hands-on activities sparked the conversations and laughter and shared experimentation that helped families figure out these really complex ideas together. And I'm going to pass it off now to Eric to share some of the challenges we encountered.
Hi. Thanks, Ari. I'm Eric, also from the Lawrence Hall of Science. Ari discussed important considerations in designing for AI sense-making in a museum context, and I'm going to build on that to consider the related challenges of attending to the ethics of AI in exhibit design. The core point here is that designing into meaningful engagement with the ethical concerns of AI is very difficult to do. So let's dive into some of what makes it difficult. Let's think about image generation. We all know these models are rife with bias. There are so many stereotypes and prompt-driven responses. For example, people tend to be attractive, under 35, able-bodied, and symmetrical, unless you specifically prompt otherwise. Oh, and all the CEOs tend to be men, and the housekeepers tend to be women. At the end of the day, AI can reinforce, elevate, and can be a vector for bias and its many harms. To give an example, we were initially excited by the idea of having an open-ended image generation exhibit, so kids could see themselves as different kinds of scientists or imagine themselves in fun places. But take a look at the astronaut. That's our colleague Tim, handsome as ever, but missing his freckles. And after a bunch of testing, this felt too risky. If AI erased Tim's freckles, who knows what else it might do to a visitor's facial features, hair, or body shape? What else might it erase? It didn't seem like there was any way to do enough testing to feel confident the visitors wouldn't feel othered or misrepresented by the experience. But given that critical engagement with AI ethics is a core goal for us, we considered how we could address bias as an ethical issue in AI by directly designing into an experience that calls it out. One of the ways that we've considered and seen bias explored is through activities like this, a sort of spot the bias type of task. However, these activities othering if you're not a white male. If I'm in a space where the outcome of the experience is learning or being reminded that I might not belong in that space, it's hard to stay motivated to stay. Even though they're meant to call attention to and confront bias in AI models, they can negatively shift engagement with the AI experience. Let's think about the takeaways we might expect with an activity like this. My daughter, for example, would notice that none of the computer programmers are like her. It's just boys. She'd learn that the reason is because the AI models were trained on a data set that reflects the overrepresentation of white males in that field. So she's learned that AI models carry the biases of their training data, which is a valuable insight for understanding AI systems. But that's not all she's learned. For my daughter, another takeaway of that experience is that AI as a field tends not to include people like her, that she may not be welcome there. This is a heavy weight to carry and to have expressly foregrounded by the experience while you are learning about it. Another approach we've explored is ethics by analogy, where visitors might consider how a poorly trained classifier can misidentify objects, such as this, maybe you've heard of or seen this fish versus trash activity. The challenge here is that the key takeaway is mostly technical. An AI model is limited to the patterns it finds in its training data. This bias is important and matters for model performance. But what the specific biases are matters just as much. They are not neutral. It is important to also understand that these biases can be far from trivial, that they can lead to racialized harm in the world, and they can serve to otherize visitors and reinforce stereotypes. It's not an easy lift to go from trash and tomatoes to racialized harm. I want to end with a recent example of another ethical challenge. In this exhibit, visitors move within a physical frame and see their image on a large screen get stylistically transformed. Visitors can press a button to cycle between several different artistic styles. One is Studio Ghibli, which we included because it's recognizable and enjoyed by many of our visitors. It is current given the recent controversy with ChatGPT and other models running roughshod over artists like Miyazaki's work. However, this critical ethics layer was initially absent simply because we forgot to get this interpretive sign on the floor in the first few weeks. And boy, did we hear about it real quick. For some visitors, the playfulness was exactly the problem with this exhibit, in that it felt dismissive of the artist's perspectives and, in their view, made a game out of plagiarism. In all of this, we continue to encounter the inescapable fact that AI is different than most other content areas we explore, in that visitors come in with way more opinions than they might about, say, our Animal Discovery Zone or our exhibit on the physics of sound. And we know science centers and museums are really grappling with whether and what stance to take about AI, and about what role we should play in shaping how the public makes sense of AI, be it playful, critical, or otherwise. And we're thrilled to be a part of this discussion with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, so many thoughts, so many comments, so many questions. I'm going to invite our visitors. Oh, there goes my. Oh, we're 30 seconds early. I'm going to invite the audience to answer that same question. What's something that stood out to you about this presentation? What's something you want to know more about? And as you all fill out the chat, I'm going to actually invite Brian back on the screen, and we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. I think Kim will probably spotlight you with us somehow, some way. There we go. Hi. Okay, so first and foremost, I was very interested in how in both projects you all talked about challenges that came up and how you resolved them. I'm wondering, we have a lot of folks in our audience today who are in, museum spaces and exhibits. I'm wondering, like, do you have any advice, guidelines, etc., for how to design these types of interactive exhibits in museum spaces? Like, are there concerns? Are there considerations? How do you do it? How do you make the magic happen?
You folks want to go first?
I mean, I think it's definitely the hardest place I've tried to design in the science center areas. And so it feels extra important to kind of lean into our community kind of advisory folks and like review, and also like, how does this connect into your lives? Like, where are you at with AI to inform design? Like, so we knew we had, like with Virtually Human, that didn't have any generative AI in it, because we started in 2020. and and so, the next round we were like, all right, we have to do something with that. But immediately there was just like all of the land, like we can't have it text-based. A lot of our learners are pre-literate. So we went to image, and then all the energy costs and the weird hallucinations. So just, getting ideas started, and then testing, finding where it breaks is just extra, extra, extra important, I think, with AI. And you're gonna get pushback, like from people, from even our own colleagues are kind of, it's just AI is a little bit fraught, right? Or a lot fraught. And what's the word of the year? Slop, right? So yeah, it's a difficult space.
Thank you. You're making me think of the mantra move fast and break things, right? That often in tech we're like pushed to just get out there. But I'm hearing a little bit of a different approach where you said test, 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 right? So I appreciate that insight. Brian or Eric?
Get out there and break things is great until it becomes a sudden experiment on the human species, like we're doing, like what we did with social media. Um, and did pretty poorly with, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Um, I guess I could say a few things. One of the things I'll note is that it is I don't say easy, but it's one thing to make an exhibit that's interactive, that plays with or is creative with AI in some way. And then there's another about actually teaching something.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like these magic boxes that we have access to now are, you can just like put up something that like you guys have, like, takes a photo and stylizes it. Cool. Like there's a lot of sort of exhibits that are like that, right? Whether it's like, crumple up some paper and it'll interpret it as things, or put your face in front of it and it'll change it, or whatever. It's all sort of here's a cool technology, use it, and cool, look at its output. It is you made this thing, didn't you? And so there's some personal meaning making, there's some ownership, but it's really easy to not have learning. And that's what Lumini was. It was like people would come up and they would dance with it and they'd walk away, and we go, what do you think of the AI? And they go, what AI? We're like,
Mhm.
oh no, the thing that was improvising you. It was improvising? I'm like, okay, okay. We need to really like, so the like the I think the challenge is in these things is to not make them fun or compelling experiences, but once they get across a point, especially if the point isn't about creativity, which is an easy one, which is one that I'm doing, is because it's like, oh well, we need to teach something, how about teaching about the thing, like teaching about the AI itself. But there's I think a lot of hard work, just like it's hard to make a really good like educational game, um I would say that it's definitely hard to communicate the ethics of a project with as much gusto as the technical, just echoing the previous talk. Um I feel like there is a pretty strong voice in the room when it comes to AI literacy that is representative of pretty commercial and market-driven interests.
Yeah.
So, if you Google AI bubble, you can read lots of articles about sort of how people are speculating on the role of this technology in our world, and how useful maybe it is versus how much it's just being forced on us. And Definitely we need to learn how to interact and engage with these things, just like, we did with lead. Like we had lead everywhere, and then we're like, oh wait, maybe this is something that we should be safe with, and we should use gloves and not use it in certain settings. And like we just need to figure that out. But it would be nice to figure that out beforehand instead of like in our own homes, right? And your kids are sitting there licking the walls, and you're like wondering what's going to happen. So there's definitely, I feel like, for those of us outside of the like, and I naively view myself as an academic, at least directly outside of capitalism, not necessarily, we're all in it, but to varying degrees. And I feel like that those of us who have the luxury to point out the other stuff
Mm,
really should and could be focusing on that, because there's more about learning about these technologies than just being power users.
mhm,
Though those skills are useful and important, it really, in terms of making an informed consumers and informed voters and policymakers, there's more to it than that. So
Absolutely.
that's something that I find to be sort of almost like a call to action for us lately, is because there's so much of oh my gosh, use our product.
Mm.
And maybe that, like, I've used it for some instances and it's been fantastic, but there's like not nearly as much as like I got an email a couple of days ago from ChatGPT. This exemplifies everything. I should
Okay.
put my slides. All from the company, from
Oh,
Open.
okay.
And it said, ask ChatGPT anything. Dot dot dot. No, really, anything. And it's literally the opposite of this chatbot of truth project that we have, which is like, actually, there's good and bad questions. No, OpenAI says this thing is knows everything. It's
Yes.
in their ad, and it's some of it's a disconnect between the tech people and the people who are doing the ad campaigns. It doesn't matter though. Like, it's how these things are being sold and pushed to us. So anyway, I think keeping that angle in mind is important for us. And honestly, just echoing some of what was in the previous talk, focusing on what AI is bad at, I think is just as important, if not more so, than what it's good at. Understanding the affordances as well as the constraints and risks are equally kind of important topics. So showing where AI fails, I think is a fantastic sort of mission for a project to have. Um,
I like that.
I think the challenge for us on those kinds of problems is just how to do it in an evergreen way. It's these things are moving so fast that even like what are good questions today and bad questions tomorrow is going to change. Like the second society is used to these things running as operating systems on our computers and having access to our webcams and can see us all the time. Whenever we cross that line as a society, then those questions are definitely going to need to be upgraded because it can see what hat you're wearing suddenly, and it can maybe
Right.
so like how to do it in a way that's time proofed and this super fast moving scale is, I think, the real challenge in some of these things as well.
Yeah. Okay, you gave us so much to think about.
Yeah, I'm
What
done. I'm not. Don't worry, I'm done.
well, what came up for me like while listening was this question. It's twofold. It's a question about like AI literacy. Like you all are kind of touching on this AI literacy, right? But with like a lens towards justice, equity, like agency with these systems, right? Moving folks from being passive consumers of the technology, who the technology's in the background, it's ubiquitous, and you have no idea that's there, versus like I can identify it, but I can also I know how it works, I know where its issues are in like a personal way. So there was a question in the chat around AI literacy, like, is there a specific, I don't know, like outcome that you all are looking for? And I'm gonna kind of phrase that as I saw a question about evaluation. So like, are you measuring folks' AI to literacy development? Like, what are y'all looking for? What are you learning from these projects?
yeah. Um, I can start by sort of how we're like we think about AI literacy. Um, we always hold two terms, agency and criticality. And the idea is that we want our visitors to develop a sense that, they can recognize AI, they feel some sense that they can work with it, and sort of not let it sort of work on them. Um, and also some criticality. And so that's the idea that they're gonna um, not take it at face value, that they're not gonna sort of ascribe it as an oracle. Brian, I think was the term you use, which is, so, we see that so much where it's just seen as what it says is gospel. And so like really focusing on that dual sense of um, feeling empowered to make use of AI, but also recognizing its limitations and having those limitations and the potential harm front and center is real core to how we understand literacy.
Yeah, dope. Thank you for that definition. I think I also have that like duality in my own definition of AI literacy. Do you all have actual like evaluation metrics that you're using? Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know we have some folks who are also trying to build AISL and or DRK-12 or whatever the new solicitation is. And so probably curious about how you evaluate these types of exhibits.
We are doing learning talk analysis on the work that we're doing. So if we have a paper coming out on our initial findings from doing interviews and like CK like content question or content knowledge questions post interaction, and those pointed to some learning kind of design mappings that we thought useful, but we're currently going doing a deep dive in learning talk analysis, which I think is going to yield a lot more nuanced information for us and contextualize some of the things that we found kind of just from certain like from the survey and interview type stuff. We also have developed an active prolonged engagement inspired instrument called Apex, that describes trajectories of learning in museum spaces. If you, oh wait, hold on, this is a direct message. Nope. How do I send it to everybody? If you go to, I think that's the right website. This is an instrument that we published that if you've got time on your hands, just like learning talk analysis, it's a way of sort of dissecting how people are learning across time in a number of dimensions. So like uh physical engagement versus intellectual engagement versus social engagement, and sort of what trajectories across each of those dimensions look like. So for SoundClouds, for example, people had no idea what the hell was going on, but they were really physically engaged.
Mhm.
So they apprehended physically what to do with these balloon things really quickly because people know what to do with balloons, but they really didn't get the intellectual engagement at all. They kind of were like, "What the hell is going on? I don't know," and they just played. Yeah, so they're like, I like using Apex quite a bit just to talk about. Uh-oh, it's been arch. Uh-oh, you guys just freaked me out. The website's down. Now I need to go look.
I know I got nervous too.
Oh no, it is. Okay. Well, it was up a week ago. I have to check that out. We do have a paper on this that was I think at this. It got a like an instrumentation award. But I like Apex as a framework for thinking and talking about design and learning without actually applying it. Just because it allows me to talk about, like I just did with SoundClouds. Oh, there's the way, like the ways that people are engaging can be split up in some different dimensions, and we can use language to talk about those individual dimensions. Like, were people like, did they get how to collaborate together, and were there collaborative things? That's like a whole social thing, which is really different than did they understand how to physically use the interface, which is different. Did they engage with the learning content? And those are sort of there's a language there to kind of tease those apart that I find to be useful, even though doing video coding with that taxonomy is laborious because there's so many categories.
And uh, I was hearing some similar kinds of approaches that we're using the learning talk idea. Like we one of a key challenge that we're facing is our audience for this exhibit is like 7 to 12 year olds, and especially on the younger side, um, they're getting them to sort of reveal their thinking is not always easy, especially around complex stuff like this. And we had a couple strategies that we found pretty um, powerful. One was something that we sort of brought from assessment design of doing cognitive interviews, which basically we had the kids perform a task with us and did some sort of scaffolding along the way so we could kind of see what they were able to do without our help and then how our help could kind of advance them along the way. And that helped us think about what sort of instructional levers or whatever we might introduce into an exhibit component. Another and that was really digging into the words that kids were saying and the conversations was really important there. Another approach that we used, we had these what we called retrospective walkthroughs, and so the kids would with their parents often would go through the space, the exhibit space, and then we'd talk to them, and we'd basically have them walk us around the exhibit and tell us, hey, what resonated with you here? What were you getting out of this? And it was led by them, and so that helped attend to the sort of free choice aspect of a museum space because there's 18 things in the room they could attend to, and maybe they spent an hour on 3 of them, or maybe they spent 10 minutes on all 18. It's and so like giving some space for that was really important. And we found that approach also was really good to help us understand the intergenerational learning, which was again something that we really dug into with discourse analysis, which is ongoing and hugely time consuming. So yeah, and then we also leverage some dispositional surveys.
Wow, such good ideas here. I hope y'all are all. I'm like trying to do my own AISL proposal. Watch. No, but thank you. I just want to double click on that intergenerational learning piece because I do feel like that's such an like underanalyzed aspect of this, like especially around AI. I think there's a lot of focus on kids and students, and not nearly as much on like our elders, right? And our parents and our family members. So thank you for that and for all the tools and ideas that you all have given us. Okay, so as you finish up that poll, I just want to bring your attention to some resources that we have. These are our resources related to AI pathways, informal science, things about AI literacy from our partner over at Digital Promise. So much good stuff, y'all. Please take an opportunity to look through these. They are also on our website. I also want everyone to know about our EBSCO offerings. We actually provide free EBSCO accounts to folks. So if you are interested in having access to EBSCO for peer-reviewed articles, please, you can fill out this quick form. This link, I believe, is also available on our website, and I can't see the chat, but I think it's going to be added in the chat. So take advantage of this. This is a really cool resource. I use this all the time. And then we have, as always, surprise, surprise, right? We're researchers, a post-session survey. It's only going to take a couple minutes. You will do us a huge favor by completing this. We just want to know what worked well, what can we do better, right? Really believe in iterative design. I want to design things that you all want to attend. So please help me do that by answering this survey. We will also send this survey link out in our follow-up email, and I believe it'll be in our newsletter. It will be everywhere, right? You won't even have to search for it. We're going to make sure you get it. And then finally, these are our upcoming opportunities. We have our AISL awardee meeting in February. So if you are an active AISL PI or co-PI research team member, etc., you should have received emails about this to be registered. If not, there's still time to register. If you are an active PI member who's supposed to be coming to our meeting and you're on this call right now, go ahead and submit a poster, okay, and a proposal. That would be wonderful. And then we're going to come back. We have a little bit of a pause for January. doing our AISL PI meeting. And then in March, we're going to come back for our next webinar, which is going to be focused on social robots as partners in learning. So I'm super excited about that panel. I hope you all will join us again. And that's it. Thanks for attending, y'all.